Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And man, I'm excited to be back this week. We're one more week closer to the release of Snake Eyes. There's new Joe product on the horizon. There's a lot of G.I. Joe in the air, and it's got me excited this week. Got me so excited I pulled the trigger on those was it the PCS models from GameStop? They look so good. I pulled the trigger on those literally today, just hours ago. So excited. If you've not taken the moment to adorn your house with G.I. Joe stuff, now is the time to do it. You don't have to get all the retro, although I love the retro. To be honest, I love the retro more. But there's a lot of good G.I. Joe stuff out there that if you're a G.I. Joe listener, maybe you're finding this for the first time. What's the show about? It's a new G.I. Joe podcast. There's a lot of great G.I. Joe stuff out there that you could fill your life up with. And this podcast is just one of them. This podcast, by the way, is the Joe and Joe podcast, where I go over everything of G.I. Joe that I can. Previously, we just covered the cartoons for a couple years, and we went over every single episode of the Sunbow and the DIC stuff and Extreme, episode by episode, in excruciating, sometimes painful, but always fun detail. And now we're doing another episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated today, which is I go through each issue of G.I. Joe, page by page, panel by panel, with what I like to, pat myself in the back, call an expert's eye. I'm a massive comic collector, and so I know a little bit about comic books, and I like to break it down with through that lens. And I think every issue of G.I. Joe certainly deserves it. Took a lot of people a lot of hours to make these books, so we can certainly give them one of ours. With that in mind, speaking of a lot of hours, there's a lot of hours of the Movies and a Meal podcast that you guys need to listen to. So please take a gander at what our sponsors have to say. Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. I can't wait for them to cover, obviously, Snake Eyes. Actually, I should talk to Ben. Ben, if you're listening, I should be a guest on your show for Snake Eyes. We should get into it. That's complete synergy. That's happening right now. I love it. And while you're on the internet subscribing to social media, while you're on the internet subscribing to the Movies in the Meal podcast, go on your social medias. Go to Twitter, go to Facebook, go to Instagram. Follow me at Joe on Joe Pod. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. I heard from a bunch of people last week. Last week was great in response to our letters page. So I'm definitely going to keep doing letters page stuff. And if you're not familiar with that listen to the end of the show, because I am now about 8 issues off of the IDW hardcover. So I'm actually reading from my actual G.I. Joe comic books that, I've had and probably haven't cracked in 25 years. So these books come with everything. They've got all the ads, and they certainly have all the letters pages. And last week, we ran into the mystery of Lone Wolf and who Lone Wolf is. We still don't have a good answer. But what we did find was friend of the pod, G.I. Gary V, he pointed out that at pint_John, Jon, from Pint O Comics, he was the John Johnson from Portland, Connecticut that wrote in the first letter from last week. So we didn't cover that. But John Johnson, Pint John from Pint O Comics, he's out there still repping the Joe brand. And he had a letter in last week's episode. So I'm excited to see what we get to this week. I'm also really excited this week, guys, because we are doing G.I. Joe number 83. And it's the introduction of Road Pig. I love Road Pig. He's long been a favorite. I never had Road Pig as a figure, but I always dug him on the show. He was from the video game. That's how I knew him. I thought he was a great looking character. If we thought the Dreadnoks were kind of ripoffs of Mad Max, Road Pig was literally just a character from Mad Max. Like, he is Lord Humongous come to life. I love the split personality about Road Pig. I think Road Pig's awesome. So this is the introduction of Road Pig, and I couldn't be more excited to get to it. But before we do,
you were saying,
we are going to look at comic books that were on the rack the same month as G.I. Joe 83. Now, we usually also, reminder to listeners, we also do usually look at movies that were out, but the technical error I've made for, 80 episodes of this was that we were just using the on sale date, which is actually the off sale date. And that's the publication date in the indicia. It's the easiest way to keep track of it. But that wasn't the actual month of the year that things were released. So I'm pausing the movies until we get caught up. And as a good signal this month, there's an ad later in here for Halloween. So this issue is October of 1988. So now, and we had already covered on a previous issue, we covered up to December of 88. So we're just 2 issues away, 2 episodes of the podcast away from being back on track. And we're going to get back into the films that were concurrent. So then we'll be running until Marvel throws another double ship or miss ship or something like that. But for the most part, we'll be on track. So that's exciting. So now we're going to look at comic books that were on the rack the same time as G.I. Joe 83, and we're over at DC Comics. Now, DC Comics, Action Comics Weekly, rather, still publishing, still hitting us with the stalwart AAA characters such as Wild Dog, the Phantom Lady, and Jack Kirby's the Demon. Now, I love Kirby, don't get me wrong, and I actually like the Demon quite a bit. Not exactly A-list. So these characters not exactly leaping off the page to catch your eye as a reader to pick up a weekly. And I get it, you rotate based on the features inside, but man, I wish ultimately that experiment didn't work. And then they revisited, of course, years later with 52, which absolutely worked. So who am I? Who am I to judge metrics based on who's on the cover? They are good looking covers. But it's not really burning up the charts. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
you were saying.
That is what I'm saying. Catwoman, Volume 1, Number 1. This is the Catwoman's very first series. It was a mini series, and it spun out of the Frank Miller Year One Batman version of Catwoman. So where he kind of reimagined her as, frankly, a streetwalker, a prostitute. And they picked it up on this. And so it was a much needed reinvention. I don't think you have the popularity of Catwoman that she is today. And she's huge today. Unless you have this kind of dark, edgy reinvention. Prior to this, she ran around in a skirt and purple skirt, and was certainly a Batman villain, but was more. She was actually, to be honest, she was mostly defined by the 60s show, which they were great, but they didn't have an edge, Eartha Kitt and, there were 3 of them. Yeah, 3, Eartha Kitt and not Ursula Andress. Anyway, they, that was sexy Catwoman, but without an edge. The Miller Catwoman, while a little base, absolutely gave her an edge. And I think then between that and then Burton's Catwoman in the 80, Batman was 89. So Batman Returns was 91, 92. Now we'll find out in future segments of viewers saying, That really cemented Catwoman as a major player in, especially with that look, with the black sleek outfit. She really wouldn't abandon that sleek cat outfit for a good number of years, whereas she had gone the previous 35 years in the comics. I'm talking, in that purple kind of garish cartoony outfit. So she became less of a animal villain and more of a person with an angle, if that makes any sense. Where sometimes there's some Spider-Man villains that have transcended, the animal gimmickry. Dr. Octopus is one of them. He's a person with an angle, a villain with an angle, and he happens to have the octopus stuff, but he doesn't necessarily do everything that's octopusy. But then you get guys like the Lizard. I think still has a lot of his schemes revolve around lizards, that kind of difference. And this was really a watershed time for Catwoman. So the Catwoman miniseries, it's decent. I want to say Mindy Newell wrote it. I can't. Eyes are a little terrible. Well, my eyes are always terrible. Anyway, the big one actually is Doom Patrol 19. So 2 books are out this month: Doom Patrol 18, Doom Patrol 19. Doom Patrol 18 is the final issue. It's not the final issue of the magazine. It's the final issue that features the superhero-y style Doom Patrol. I want to say it is Eric Larson doing the pencils, because he did pencils for Doom Patrol in this era. Graham Nolan was doing the pencils at this point. And this was when they had, they were still kind of superhero-y. Then Doom Patrol 19 happened, and Grant Morrison threw all that out the window and went weird. If you've seen the Doom Patrol TV show, that's all Grant Morrison, and with flavors from other stuff, certainly, but most of it is that Grant Morrison feel. And Doom Patrol 19 is the actual issue where that all started. So Doom Patrol 19 on the same stands as G.I. Joe Road Pig appearance this month. 2 auspicious openings. Here's another good one. Legion, Volume 1, Number 1. Legion, spelled L.E.G. and so on. One of my favorite underrated books. It is technically Legion, and it stood for, League of, it was like Intergalactic Bounty Hunters. It stood for something. It's not bounty hunters. I'm sorry. Space cops, like, troubleshooters. But it was a really smart way to spin off the Legion of Superheroes and have a bunch of ties to the Legion of Superheroes in modern era without breaking any continuity at all. It made a whole brand new team, but a team that wasn't really about being Legion. It was about Vril Dox II, son of Brainiac, who was introduced in the Invasion crossover, and how it showed how it was his vision to try to bring the universe together. And what was so wonderful about this is, yes, there were always some weird Legion connections. Early on, the Durlin disappears. Of course, they would later reveal that was actually R.J. Brand. Stealth, I think, was like an ancestor of maybe somebody in Legion. Well, no, I'm sorry, not Stealth. Night Girl. No. From Talok 7. Shadowlass. That's right. Shadowlass's ancestor was on the team. Block's ancestor, I think it was Dryad was the name, was on the team. Eventually they bring in Captain Comic, eventually Monel. Like, there were all these Legion connections, but the book completely stood on its own. And the coolest part was that the lead of the book, Vril Dox II, or was it Quirrell? It was Vril II, I believe. Complete a-hole. Like, he was unlikable in every way, shape, or form, but he was doing good. He was doing his ultimate goal was actual justice, except he was a complete jerk to everyone around him, and it made for delicious reading. This series gets overlooked, I think, a lot, and undeservedly so, because it wasn't mainstream. It wasn't, like the main Superman, Batman, Justice League kind of titles. It completely stood on its own, and because it would occasionally tangentially wrap into Legion, which itself is always kind of a B-list second-tier book, so that would kind of make this a third-tier book just by extension. It ran 90 some issues, and then they did a series called Rebels that followed it, and then they did another Rebels follow-up. It's great. Legion, and it would be called Legion 89, and then as we rolled into the 1990, it would be called Legion 90, then Legion 91, which is cool. But the book itself was just called Legion. It's great. If you've never read it, you should. If they ever do a compendium of it, you should pick it up. It's really, really enjoyable. And it spun out of Invasion, which was cool. Speaking of Legion, we got some Emerald Empress action happening in with the Emerald Eye in Legion 57. This is a cool book. New Gods, Volume 3, Number 1. This is Paris Cullen series. It was their way to kind of really give it a go post Kirby. They had done the Return to New Gods that didn't really do anything. This is actually not a terrible series at all. There's some really cool stuff in it. They really did try to incorporate the New Gods. It didn't take off. They just put out a collection of it. It's not a big enough to be an omnibus, but it's a big, fat, complete collection of the New God stuff. It's worth taking a look. Next to it, the New Guardians, not worth taking a look, I gotta say. What else? Anything else here from DC that's really fun? Superman in Space. This, I believe, was Superman being very upset that he had murdered. It's exactly what it is. Superman was really upset that he had murdered the Kryptonians in the alternate dimension. And so he said, I can't be around humans. I got to exile myself to space so I don't kill anymore. It's a little extreme, but he did it. And it starts a fun arc. And it's eventually where he meets like his Kryptonian heritage, which leads to the Eradicator. I believe it's where he meets like the War World. And there's all kinds of really cool stuff that would resonate for years to come. That kind of gets its start when Superman's in exile. So that's in Superman number 28. Man, I got to tell you, listeners, don't neglect going to the eye doctor. Oof, I need some new specs. Glasses ain't cutting it. Any hoots, it's time.
You were saying?
Jump over to Marvel. Alf number 10 seems to be enjoying a nice big piece of Yardbird. Piece of the Barnyard Pimp, piece of chicken. I don't know what's happening in that book, but Alf's loving it. Amazing Spider-Man 312. It's McFarlane drawing Green Goblin and Hobgoblin and Spider-Man. That's a fun cover. It's a lot of action going on. Avengers 300. This is that group that I was teasing a couple issues ago, written by Simonson. I think Big John Buscema was drawing it. With Tom Palmer inks. With Mr. and Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Thor, Gilgamesh, and Captain America as the Patriot. He was the Captain at the time. That was his name. Like, that's a weird crew. And they were the Avengers. It lasted 4 or 5 issues. It did not last very long. But that is a really weird crew for Avengers 300. If you've ever seen the cover, it's a great looking cover. You know, it's drawn really well, and it certainly features everyone that's in it. But you're like, these are the Avengers? This is what we're doing? Avengers 3? All right, okay. Speaking of anniversary issues, Captain America 350 does feature the Captain fighting Captain America, and Captain America, of course, is Johnny Walker. So that's a really cool. It's a really cool cover. They're clashing in that traditional meet in the middle comic book way. Some nice framing on that. Daredevil 263. Daredevil's fighting Mephisto. This whole run got really biblical, and Daredevil talking to the devil and very on the nose in that regard. And eventually you have Beer with the Devil, which I don't think this is the Beer with the Devil issue. But it's good. It's John Romita Jr. stuff. And, you know, I'm on record saying I like me some J.O. Jr. G.I. Joe was publishing European Missions number 9 at the time. And over in Special Missions 18, you got Solo Snake Eyes story. That's awesome. And I forget if it was actually full on Solo, but Snake Eyes is on the cover. And I promise you, listeners, especially Patreons, if you guys are over on the Patreon page, patreon.com/Joe and Joe Pod. I promise you, I will get caught up and we will get these special missions done. They'll be Patreon exclusives. So we'll find out exactly what went down in G.I. Joe 18. Iron Man's fighting the Ghost in Iron Man 239. The Ghost, of course, was the villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And the rest of the month is, you know what's funny? The rest of the month is good. And there's nothing really that's... Oh, it's another anniversary, Thor 400. That's always cool. Inferno going on X-Men 241. X Factor 37 as well. But this is the one I want to talk about. We'll wrap this up. Silver Surfer number 20. If you guys... did you guys play back on NES? There was a Silver Surfer video game that, I gotta be honest, a lot of fun. It was really good. And it was... You were on a surfboard and... It was a shooter. It was kind of like a Galaga kind of, or Galaga or Zaxxon kind of shooter where the screen scrolls and you're more in, it's always moving, but you can go forward and back a little bit, but you're always moving to the right or up and down, as it were, as the map went. And in it, you fought all these bosses. And if my memory serves, they took the boss headshots from this cover on Silver Surfer number 20, with Reptile and Super Skrull and Fire Lord. I do really think they took the boss art originated from the art that's on the cover of this issue of Silver Surfer. And if you've never played the Silver Surfer game and you either have an old NES hooked up or maybe you're running some emulators and you can check it out. It was a lot of fun, man. I really played that game a lot. I did play the Wolverine game a lot. Was it called Wolverine's Revenge, or was that the later Wolverine game? I think it was just called Wolverine. They used the Jim Lee cover art where he was jumping out, and it was the game where they penalized you for using his claws because they needed a game mechanic to kind of so that you wouldn't just use his overpowered claws on everybody in the game. So whenever you popped your claws, the idea was that his healing power would have to start working to heal his hands, so he wouldn't be as strong. So you would actually lose health when you used your claws. It's insane when you think about it, but as a game mechanic, it worked all right, well enough. So there you go.
You were saying?
And that's it for You Were Saying. So now we're going to dig into G.I. Joe number 83.
Now, mass is ready.
This issue's great. I like it a lot for a lot of reasons. We're going to start with the cover. G.I. Joe 83. This mega, way too close up of Road Pig shooting his wrist crossbow bolt with, grenade, telling us that it's his property. So identifying who he is, drawn by Ron Wagner, by the way, and Bob McLeod, doing the inks. And there's actually some nice, it's not subtle at all, but there's nice light work. Like he's obviously in front of some type of heavy duty light source, like a spotlight, we'll say. And so that's casting this really hard shadow across him. And it works really well because it kind of looks like war paint on him. But it's really just, say spotlights from the police, most likely. And the choice is the camera is so uber close here. So close that his eyes are looking at you, but he's not shooting at you. And that's what's great. That crossbow explosive bolt is not aimed at you. It is aimed at someone else, probably, let's say, the spotlight that's on him. But his attention is completely on you, the viewer, and you're way too close to him. That's what's wonderful about the composition of this page. It looks simple, like, oh, give me a close-up of this crazy guy. But the way they frame his arm is chopped off, like you don't see his full arm. That makes you feel too close and claustrophobic. The cinder block is cut off. You don't see it. Like it doesn't, obviously it's cut off by the logo, but it also extends past the page. His shoulders cut off. You don't even see the bottom of his knuckles. You don't know, is he standing there? Is he on a motorcycle? You don't know anything about this except I am way, way, way uncomfortably close to this guy. If you weren't familiar with who he was, like from a toy perspective, you wouldn't have recognized him. Obviously, he's a bad guy. But if you were a fan of the toy, then you would have been like, oh, God, they're introducing Road Pig. That's fun. But there's a lot of subtle choices on this that make this cover just really, really pop for me. And I dig it quite a bit.
Yo, Joe!
So Road Pig. Script by Larry Hama. Ron Wagner back on pencils. Fred Fredericks on inks. We're going to talk about Fred Fredericks before we go any further. Bob Sharon on coloring. Michael Heisler lettering. That's a new name as well. Bobby Chase, editor. Tom DeFalco, editor-in-chief. So real quick on Fred Fredericks. I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole, but Fred Fredericks is one of the legends. He's an old school guy, guys. Fredericks, his primary claim to fame is working on he was an American cartoonist, and he drew the Mandrake the Magician strip starting in June of 1965. And he also inked the Phantom Sunday strips. So he worked on the Phantom from 95 to 2000. And he worked on Mandrake from 65 until it doesn't say when. But, he was born in 1929. So when he's working on this, he would have been 60, right? He did do inks for this. He also did inks on Nth Man, also Larry's book. He did some Punisher War Journal inks, Defenders of the Earth, which makes total sense. I loved Defenders of the Earth. That featured Mandrake the Magician and the Phantom. So he's old school. I gotta believe that Larry might have been responsible for bringing him in here, because seeing that he also worked on Nth Man and stuff. But it's great. I love seeing Fred Fredericks, and his full name was Harold Fredericks Jr. And he actually passed away about 6 years ago, March 2015. So rest in peace, Mr. Fredericks. And I love the energy that he brings to this book. There is that pulp feel to these figures. If you guys get this issue and crack it open, you'll see what I'm talking about. Best way to describe it is kind of earthy. Like everyone's got this life to them, which is very Eisner-y, which actually reminds me to say, I just recently finally read for the first time the book Eisner Miller, which is amazing and prescient. And it was published in 2005 from a conversation in 2002. So almost 20 years later, a lot of the stuff they talk about when it comes to comic books, still vital, still important, still stuff we need to deal with as an industry and, as readers and stuff of how are we going to move forward with comics. But that pulp sensibility of these people being real people and just having, being made out of soft tissue is palpable in this book. I love it. So I love Fred Fredericks. Welcome aboard. I don't know if he does the next issue, if this was a one-off or anything, but I like it. And I'm a fan of like those old pulp Phantom and Mandrake stuff. I've not read a ton. I've read what I can get my hands on, and it's always fun. I always think the Phantom's silly and funny and, crazy. A guy in purple, with a skull, a purple striped suit with skull paraphernalia, living in the jungle, fighting poachers. And somehow he's like one of the biggest things ever is absolutely insane to me. But we open somewhere in New Jersey, and we're at a bar, and it's a well-attended sports bar, and there's a bunch of dudes hanging out. And at the end of the bar is our titular Road Pig, and we don't find out what he's asking for, but whatever he's ordered from the bartender, they're making fun of him. These local dudes, you sure we can serve him that without carding him? Blah blah blah. Meanwhile, this dude, Road Pig, is dressed just like Road Pig. He's not unassuming in any way, shape, or form. Why these three yokels think it's okay and they're going to be able to make fun of this guy just because he's not ordering, a beer is insane to me.
Yo, Joe!
And we get the payoff to what he's ordered here. He says, and he says it very eloquently. And what, may we ask? And if you notice the use of the word we, that's really key for the introduction of Road Pig. Is so humorous about ordering a large grape soda and a plate of chocolate donuts. We fail to see the hilarity inherent in that simple request. What, pray tell, is the joke? And then, of course, they make fun of him for that, and so on and so forth. It's a great introduction to a character, especially a character with split personalities, because as they make fun of him, you see his anger rise, and the camera starts. This middle section is awesome. You get a little bit of the local that's ribbing on him, and he's actually cast in colors. The colors are great because it just puts him in a red wash, which then breaks the depth, the plane of depth, and really focuses our eye on what's actually colored in quote true colors, which is Road Pig. Then the zoom goes into Road Pig's face, and we still know that it's Road Pig because it's a real close up. He actually doesn't have any eyebrows. No, he does. And then it goes even further, and now it's on his eyeballs, and just his eyeballs. And as he's saying that, we see his language change from that really nice, well-spoken grammar. He starts to stutter, and he says, use shouldn't oughta make us mad. Nice Donald goes away, and all that's left is nasty old Road Pig, and all he wants. And then the last panel is we get that wonderful, Daredevil-esque shot of guys getting thrown out the window of a bar. It's at the Hold It In, INN. So that's a great 2-page introduction to this guy. We see that he has split personalities of some sort. We see that he loses his temper. We see that based on his beverage choice, he's probably got some Dreadnok affiliation. And we see that he can take on 3 dudes and throw them out of the bar. That's great. Like that really gives a lot of character. That does a lot of heavy lifting for the character in a page, 1 page and a splash.
Yo, Joe!
So while he's still stomping on dudes, and it's a full-on bar fight, it's not just those 3. He's beating up all these other dudes too. The TV was on, and he sees on the news that Zarana was picked up by and Zanzibar. They're on the news as being arrested by by Captain Coho of the state police. So what this tells me is last issue, which was great, and it was the drill sergeant issue where guys were going through training camp or boot camp. That was a fill-in, and it was Marshall Rogers and I forget whoever did the fill-in pencils for the rest of that. It's been a week. It's escaping me, but that was an absolute fill-in issue because remember it ended on that really quick cliffhanger of that Captain Coho guy going like, "We're going to get you, Duke boys," and then that was it. And then the next issue we pick up and we're at boot camp. So I like this. This is the continuation of that story. It makes sense, and Road Pig's very upset because he sees Zarana, and he actually calls her our long lost love. So then that further cements he's got some history with the Dreadnoks, and he rolls out on his bicycle from the venerable Hold It In.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, over the Gulf of Mexico. Now we know the Cobra Island's in the Gulf of Mexico, and so we see a bunch of Cobra helicopters heading towards what we find out is they're heading towards the mainland. And it's Dr. Mindbender and Zartan, and we learn that they're doing a, quote, preemptive surgical strike against the pit. Now, if you remember, it's like 3 or 4 issues ago, the Techno Viper came back with information about where the pit was. And so they had this, and then they couldn't act on it. They had to finish up their Cobra battles. And so, but they had this information. So this is nice, Larry not letting that plot thread go, circling back to it. So the Joes know that it's, or they surmise, or the Joes, or rather the Cobra surmises that the Joes are hidden in the desert in these Quonset huts in Utah. So they're going to go in and do a surgical strike on that. Now, Mindbender reminds us that the only people that could possibly, because they're talking about it over radio, and all these, and there's a lot of helicopters. There's some Mambas, and then there's those transport helicopters carrying a lot of ordnance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's at least 8 vehicles on their way to the mainland. The only people that could be listening are people who are using Dr. Mindbender's ingenious quartz synchronized automatic frequency hopper that all Cobra radios are fitted with. Well, do you remember what happened at the end of the Cobra Island War? They gave a boat to Captain Min. They gave a Cobra hydrofoil. So Min is actually just fishing outside of Galveston, and he has one of those Cobra radios in the boat. So Captain Min shows up again, and he can overhear them talking about it.
Yo, Joe!
Which is an awesome thread that Larry didn't let go, and he reused. It's great. So now we go elsewhere, and we see that we're at the New Jersey State Police headquarters. And it's this Captain Coho guy, and he's back, and he's dealing with law and order, and specifically Law, the dog's order, as he likes to say. Law wants to take Zartan and Zarana into custody. Coho's having none of it. He's saying, they're going to get our charges first, then you feds can take them. Blah, blah, blah. They're going to face our justice. Jersey justice is what they're going to face. And as they go to visit the prisoners, Law does. He gets food thrown on him by Zarana, and she says she's suing everybody. Anybody that doesn't have $2 million in liability insurance had better run for the hills. And Law is actually concerned about this. He apparently doesn't have $2 million in liability insurance. So this is a fun ad. No more board games, board B-O-R-E-D, for Christmas. You get the Buck Rogers in the 25th Century game. Again, I'll ask this. Anyone out there play this Buck Rogers game? Because it looks awesome. And they also have the Dragonlance game, which also looks awesome from TSR. Those games look pretty great.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, in Galveston, Min is tying up his boat, his Cobra hydrofoil, which still doesn't feel like a great boat to fish on, but it's an awesome boat. And all these other fisher guys are jealous of him. And they look great. These secondary characters, and this goes back to the Fred Fredericks inking on this. He brings this characterization to these secondary characters that I think is really, really great. Like, everyone looks different. Every face looks delineated differently. It's really nice. This one, I don't know if this was on Wagner stuff or it was in the inks. One of the fishermen has a tattoo with a heart that says Ethel on the arm, just for no reason. So Min docks his boat, heads to a phone booth, and he calls the Pentagon. The one in Arlington, Virginia.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, over Texas, Cobra's refilling. So let's get this straight. Cobra, who is a sanctioned government by the UN, recognized as having, an island. They may be bad guys, they may be terrorists, they may be this and that and the other, but they're a legit company, legit country, with full UN designation and all that stuff, are just flying attack vehicles over the United States to attack the Joe headquarters. When they do it before their Cobra Island, that's different. When they're like attacking the pit in Jersey, because they're just terrorists. Now they're a country. They're a country that 4 or 5 issues ago, whenever the Cobra War ended, whenever that was, they made a deal with the government. They were like, hey, we as a government are going to call a truce with you as a government because we're cool. All right, we're cool. We're going to do this. And then we're going to stop. We're going to cease our fighting. But now they're poking the bear and they're flying over Texas on their way to the pit in Utah. And we see that they're using, they're using the maps. So what we learn here is they're fairly positive they know where it is. They see the Quonset huts. They're like, these huts, this is where it's at. It's underneath this huts. They had satellite imagery. But sometimes instruments can be wrong. That's what Zartan's warning them about. Zartan and Mindbender. But they're basically going to attack those huts.
Yo, Joe!
Which makes me think it's good that they didn't have although I know they use GPS as a concept in these books, but could you imagine if this was at the time of telephone GPS? They probably you wouldn't be able to get away with this, because this issue has a great gag, which we'll get to at the end. But if you had that really precise GPS that we do now, where your telephone's underneath your, in your car 10 feet away from you, this plot probably wouldn't fly too much. We'd have to come up with a couple other reasons why they attack somewhere differently. Meanwhile, in Utah, Spirit is sitting guard as he normally does, and we see the guys that were coming back from New Jersey that were guests of Captain Coho. We see them return to the pit, and while they're returning, some guys from the pit, Dusty and it looks like Lowlight and Leatherneck, they're all exiting the pit to do something. We don't exactly know what, but it's as nice. Again, more continuity of showing the connective tissue from issue to issue, and I think that's always important. There's something important about keeping us abreast of the goings on of a cast this large. They did it a lot in the Legion, where they would, even if an issue didn't feature Monel and Sunboy or what have you, they'd say, yeah, they're off in this sector fighting, stopping, Starfinger. And that was it. It was just kind of giving us a heads up. And in this case, we're still dealing with Coho and those guys. We knew they kind of got busted by the police. So now we see that, yeah, they got out. Of course, we knew they were going to get out of jail, but they got out, and this is a quick follow-up, and now they're back in Utah. So I like that. I like that world building. It's really world building is what I'm saying I'm appreciating here.
Yo, Joe!
Now, before we go any further, this is... this is a podcast. This is a person speaking into a microphone, and I'm recording my voice through a soundboard. Got a lot of bells and whistles. If only I had access to the Quick Shot Studio 4 home DJ machine, things could have been different 25 years ago. Introducing 30 years ago, the DJ machine. You want to be the star of your own radio show? Then get the Studio 4 home DJ machine. Become a professional disc jockey right at home. The DJ machine is so real. It's like being in a recording studio. You can record music, create exciting sound effects, everything from exploding bombs to weird electronic sounds. You can do voiceovers, just like on radio and TV. Then you mix everything together to make your own special tapes. The DJ machine makes you a star. You can hold dance parties for your friends, compete with your favorite DJ on the radio, and because it's portable, take the fun with you wherever you go. Get the Studio 4 DJ machine and start your career as a professional disc jockey today. Available at Ames, Bloomingdale's, Caldor, Fred Meyer's, Toys R Us, anywhere you want to be a professional. They're saying you can be a professional DJ with the Quick Shot home DJ machine. Guys, please tell me someone in the audience had a home DJ machine, specifically the Quick Shot home DJ machine, because it looks awesome. And I got to be honest, it doesn't look wildly different from the unit that I'm staring at right now. So I'm all for it. Please tell me someone had a home DJ machine. Back in New Jersey, Road Pig is now, he's actually talking to himself. So are we, now this is the difference. So this is what's cool about Road Pig's split personality. And so I guess probably if I were talking to my good friend Jason LaHood, he would probably elaborate on exactly the neurosis or the psychosis or whatever it is behind this. His personalities are actually talking to each other, which I don't think that's what they call a split personality. So he's saying, are we ready for this evening's activities, Road Pig? And then Road Pig says, ready when you are, Donald. So Road Pig's one person, Donald's another person, and they talk to each other. That's really cool. If you think about something like the Incredible Hulk, the Hulk is the Hulk, and whether he likes Banner or doesn't like Banner or whatever, but they don't talk to each other. He becomes Banner, Banner becomes the Hulk, etc. So on. They are split personalities, and usually when you see movies like, was it the Many Faces of Eve, or like any of those split personality movies, it's or that movie Split, it's usually they know of each other, but they rarely talk to each other, right? And even in Split, I don't think he spoke to himself. I think he would just flip between the characters. These guys are having conversations. So this is a specific psychosis. I'm gonna hit my boy up, Jason LaHood, and we're gonna see. He's a world-renowned therapist based out of Chicago. He's brilliant, and he would actually know the answer to this. So I'm gonna find out, and maybe we'll tweet it out after this post this week. So he attacks the sheriff's office, and from this whole scene, I'm getting heavy Terminator 2 vibes. Terminator 2 had not launched in the theaters yet. So I'm just saying, Jim Cameron, did you read this book? Because, but I would say, take that back. It's also heavy Terminator vibes too, when the Terminator came back to the police station and jacked it up. So anyway, but yeah, heavy Terminator vibes from this moment, and it's great. So he attacks. First, he disables all the state police cars, and then he just uses that crossbow and starts shooting things up. And actually, the panel here in the middle on the right-hand side, is very close to what would be the other side of the cover. You get the bright flare of the explosion reflecting on his face, and he's shooting his explosive bolts there. So you could imagine putting a camera on the other side, and that's where you get what's on the cover. So after he takes out the front, he heads inside.
Yo, Joe!
And all the state police are, trying to barricade everything. But he comes driving in on his motorcycle, busting in and just tearing the place up. They're calling for backup, and it's a lot of great action. Very Terminator-esque. It's exactly what you'd think. The animation, the drawing of it, very alive, very electric. Lots of movement. There is no one. That's the other thing in this issue. There's no one. When there's action, no one's standing upright. Everyone's moving. If you look on the last couple of pages, your characters are always, they're at an angle because they're always moving in one direction or the other. When they need to be static, they're static, but not when there's action. When there's action, someone's always leaning somewhere, making a move, and that implies speed and movement, which is something, hard to do in a static comic page.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, underneath the Utah desert on a Rattlesnake Speedway, there's a bunch of earth-moving machines. So these aren't like G.I. Joe toys. These are literally like Caterpillar, backhoes and stuff like that. And Roadblock and Hawk are overseeing it. Or is that supposed to be Duke? Well, we're gonna find out for a second because it looks like Hawk from behind. They're talking to Hollingsworth, and Hollingsworth tells them they got this tip from this Captain Min that Cobra's on the way, and then they confirmed it with their own radar, but they know it's Cobra. They're not going to try to intercept it, which again is wild. Like, imagine, this is Red Dawn level stuff, if you really think about it. Another sovereign country invading the U.S. to attack a U.S. military base, of all things. Like, that's insane.
Yo, Joe!
And in Jersey, Road Pig is making short work of the jail cells. He's looking for Zarana. He drives past Zanzibar, and what's really funny, and it's necessary for the plot, but it's really kind of silly. They have Zanzibar's skiff locked up in a jail cell. Why would they do that? I don't know. There's an impound yard that's where his skiff would be, but for some reason the sheriffs put his skiff in an actual jail cell next to Zanzibar. That's insane, but you do need it for the plot, so that's okay. That makes me chuckle. And Road Pig's not having any of it. Zanzibar asks for help to get him out too, and Road Pig only cares about Zarana. So he kicks Zanzibar in the midsection and continues on his way, looking for the one that he loves.
Yo, Joe!
And in Utah, the Joes are just about finished. Yeah, and it was Hawk earlier. Joes are just about finished as the Cobra helicopters are kind of heading their way. Now, it's a funny little bit. It's a little 2-panel bit thing as they're driving over some cows, and it's hard. You can't make them out at all. Like, you could do without it's fun. It's fun dialogue to keep you interested for a couple panels of just movement, but it doesn't really read on the page. But Mindbender says, did you see those dead cows? And there's some really, really, really far away, some like cows laying sideways on the ground. It's not a necessary gag. But Zartan says they weren't dead. Local teenagers sneak out at night and tip over the sleeping ones, which is funny. It's kind of funny. This might be where I first got the idea that was a thing to do. And then cow tipping was absolutely in the zeitgeist joke for a good long time in the 80s and early 90s. Did anyone try to do it? Because I did. And the one time we did try to go cow tip, it's very cruel to the cows. So we were being jerks, but we were drunk and 17 or 16 and stupid. And we were, I think it was prom weekend. And we knew that there were some cows in a pasture next to where we were camping. And so we all decided to do it. And one, we never found the cows, so that's the punchline. So don't worry about it. No cows were harmed. Two, I'm sure we would have hurt ourselves or gotten in trouble. But three, most of us got our comeuppance for even trying it, because that was the day that I learned what alternating current meant when it came to electrified fencing. I believe what my big mouth said was first of all, I have rubber boots on, which I didn't. They were probably like plastic soled, but I have boots on. It's not gonna hurt. And then I put my foot on the electrified fence and it didn't hurt. So I then turned to all the other geniuses we were with and I said, see, it doesn't hurt. But then the alternating current kicked in and it hurt quite a bit. Yeah, so that's when I learned that, yeah, electrified fences, at least the type that were being used by this particular farm, it's not just touch it always and die. Like you touch it and if you're not being currently currented, you're like, oh, we're fine. And then you get zapped. And so then with that knowledge, we then did try to scale it. We did successfully scale it, did get zapped multiple times on the way over, and then never found the cows and then went back the other way and got zapped again multiple times. But all of this to say, as a 13-year-old kid, this might have been the first time that I was introduced to the idea of cow tipping, which then later led to my electrocution. So thank you, Larry Hama. Thank you very much. Now, the Joes, they can hear the whoop, whoop, whooping of the choppers, so they realize they better hustle up.
Yo, Joe!
Because meanwhile in New Jersey, Road Pig has now reached the end of the cell block, and that's where Law and Coho are, and they are in a shootout with Road Pig, and Road Pig uses his big anvil, cinder block anvil weapon, to break open the jail cell that Zarana's in. And he says, your deliverance is at hand, fair Zarana. Now perhaps, so this whole time, maybe there really was something between them. He says, you might like us a little bit. And then she says, of course, at a Road Pig. And then she gets disgusted. You too, Donald. So apparently she is cool with Road Pig, the big macho biker, Mad Max, but she hates Donald, the dumb part of Road Pig. So that's great. I dig it. I like it a lot. I am a bigger fan of Zarana and Mainframe from the cartoon, but this is a fun relationship that I think they have some fun with throughout their years in the comics. So this is cool.
Yo, Joe!
And back in Utah, we now get the helicopters approaching the Quonset huts, and there's an APC out front. Looks like an Ostriker, and Mindbender giving the order to fire rockets, and they do, and they just below these Quonset huts, they blow them away. Zartan reminding him that the real fight's going to be underground, which is that they know that the Joes are all hunkered underground. But initially, first shot absolutely goes to Cobra.
Yo, Joe!
And so the transport choppers land, and all the Cobra troops jump out, and they start heading into to the bombed out huts, because they assume that there's going to be a lot of Joes that are going to start piling out, and they're hitting it with rocket launchers. Like this is the equivalent of in The Last Jedi when Luke showed up and Kylo Ren was like, hit him with everything. This is that. This is absolutely that. And then we need Hux to turn and go, do you think he got him?
Yo, Joe!
And back in New Jersey, the Dreadnoks are a little cornered, because there's really no. So they're Road Pig's gonna try to get out the way he came in, and Coho is saying to Law that they can actually slip out and catch him, because they know that's his only way of egress. So if they slip out the back door, they'll catch him when he's trying to escape. They can't stop him from freeing Zarana. She's already out. Blah blah blah. They're all either way. They're all overmatched, right? But he realizes that, and this is the Road Pig. This is the Road Pig persona, that there's a bunch of cops outside, so he knows if they go out the normal way, they're surrounded, and they're gonna get chewed up. So he realizes the only way out is with Zanzibar's help, and so it's Zanzibar's lucky night, and he does decide to spring Zanzibar. The fact that we have a guy who drew the Phantom, who drew a ton of pirates and a ton, like that look, drawing Zanzibar in this issue is great. I will say this, and I think it's really evident on this page. I don't think the reproductions on this book for this issue, I don't think it did it any justice. There is a lot of line work missing that I'm sure was there. So it might have been maybe it was too faint of a brush or something like that. But if you just look at this drawing of Zanzibar, like it's there, and you know it's there, but it's not being reproduced. And there's other places throughout this issue that I just don't think the reproduction was great. And this is that era that we're about to get into, like the digital coloring and better quality paper and stuff, but we're still not there yet. So we might be to like, we're almost, the technique is maybe a little ahead. I don't know. I'm not completely happy with the print, the physical, literal physical printing job of this issue.
Yo, Joe!
And in Utah, we get Butkus. We get nothing. There's nothing here, Dr. Mindbender. We've searched and probed every square inch. There's nothing below the sand but solid rock. It's like WNDs in Iraq. They're not there. They were never there. They got Vipers out with metal detectors. It's just rock. And the Star Viper, he was conveniently shot down before they could confirm what he was saying, where he said the base was. All this stuff. So Mindbender and Zartan are really going at it, and it's time to pick up and leave. So remember, they attacked foreign soil, a sovereign country. That's wild.
Yo, Joe!
And in Jersey, Coho and Law have slipped out, and so now they're kind of leading the attack from the front. And we see that this is why they had to put Zanzibar's skiff in the jail with them, because they're going to use this skiff to fly out. So as the cops circle in and corner these dreadnoks,
Yo, Joe!
Zanzibar hits it, and they blow their way out of the jail, and they fly off into the night. They're getting away. They can't get away with this. Now the Law, I like this. Law says we don't have to worry about getting sued. Look at it this way. He's also happy because had they just given them to him, we wouldn't be in this predicament. Blah, blah, blah. And we get some more fun banter, some more fun Road Pig banter as we go out. Now, also on this page is the bullpen bulletins that also points out that it's Halloween month, so this is October. There's a UNICEF volunteers for Halloween thing that's happening, so we know this is October. So next month we'll treat as November, and then December, and then and if we get to another biweekly, we'll be following up. It was for the You Were Saying stuff.
Yo, Joe!
And back in Utah, this is great. You see from far, far, far off in the distance, some smoldering flames, and all you get is a hatch opens up, and it's Hawk. He says it worked. The secret of the pit is safe, and all we had to do was pick up the Quonset huts and move them a mile across the desert. The brilliant part of this storytelling is that Larry did not tell us what they were doing. He foreshadowed it, and there were enough clues that if you were kind of guessing it, you could have guessed, because they did a similar thing with this before, but he didn't spell it out. And you get the payoff at the end of the story, especially with this great long shot. If you think about storytelling, the shot from the high angle here, where you see the outline of where the Quonset huts were, and the only thing in the middle of it is Hawk looking through the binoculars through the hole in the ground. Awesome. It's a really great way to tell that story, like a perspective to tell it. So they win without even shooting a bullet or firing one rifle.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, in a stunning turn of events, in San Francisco at the Presidio, there's a woman in purple that is charming her way onto the base, and she meets up with our friend Jinx. She says, "Don't jerk me around, young lady. I want to see Billy." She says, "Well, you're going to have to be more specific than that. Do you have any identification?" And this woman in purple whips out a pistol, putting it in Jinx's face, and says, "I don't need no stinking ID. I'm Billy's mother." What? Cobra Commander's wife enters the chat. That's wild. And now we're on to Postbox the Pit for this month. We've got a letter from John Fox out of Long Beach, California. my backyard. David Law out of Vancouver, British Columbia. Jackie Friedlander out of Houston, Texas, who Jackie suggests that G.I. Joe fans call themselves Joeys, like Trekkies. That never caught on. And David Forschoffel Jr. from Salina, Ohio. He makes an appearance here, proclaiming issues 74 through 76 were the best he's read since issues 39 through 50. So good for him. But spotlight this week is on the Abamonte brothers, Brett, Drew, and Tom. Now, address withheld by request, so I don't know where they're writing in from. But these guys are taking the mantle of renowned G.I. Joe academicians. I feel compelled to offer readers an explanation for an apparent error in 76. I believe this was pointed out by our friend Dave Amiot. Psych-Out tells the driver of the point vehicle, bad move, toll booth. The lead vehicle that was referred to as a self-propelled cannon, the Slugger, usually operated by Thunder. Thunder, however, was unavailable as he had been previously assigned to another classified mission. Thus, Toll Booth was relegated to the responsibility of driving the Slugger. This left the operation of Toll Booth's assigned vehicle to the competent Hardtop. Now, his younger brother and he had collected at least one of each G.I. Joe Cobra figure. Most of the vehicles, they have a complete collections of G.I. Joe Special Missions, Tales of the G.I. Joe Digest, and Action Force comics. They have just about everything with the words G.I. Joe on it. So since he's only... What? All right, he didn't write this. He's only 5 years old, and his dad, a Nom collector, wrote this letter for me. Dad says, I'll have to share my no prize with my brother, who is 3.5 years old. So Brett Abamonte, I'm assuming, or maybe Tom. Well, Brett might be the dad, and then the two brothers are Drew and Tom, or vice versa. Or maybe Drew's, you know what I'm saying. And every one of them got their own no prize. So the Abamonte family, are you still out there? That's this week's Postbox call to the listeners. And one more thing before we go. On the last page, guys, here it is. Now, I don't know if this is the first time they posted it, but I don't remember seeing it in the previous 6 issues or so that we did. Now you can be the next Joe. You can be a real American hero and get your own G.I. Joe action figure. This is for the Steel Brigade. Guys, I never did this. I'm a damned fool. I never got my own Steel Brigade. And this is the checklist where you filled it out and you put in your code name, how you characterize yourself, get your own file card, what's your weapons expert, secondary specialty, primary specialty. I know the Steel Brigades, they go for lots on the collector's market. They're highly sought after. Did you guys have your own Steel Brigade out there? Let's talk about it. Share your Steel Brigade memories on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod. And remember, now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.